Dr. Emma Thompson hadn't meant to discover aliens on a Tuesday night. She had simply been updating the calibration settings on her observatory's new quantum interference detection array when the readings started making no sense at all. "That's impossible," she muttered, adjusting her thick-rimmed glasses as she stared at the data streaming across her monitor. The small observatory, nestled in the rolling hills of rural Wisconsin, was supposed to be studying neutrino emissions. Instead, it was picking up what appeared to be a perfectly circular void moving through the upper atmosphere. The void was approximately 300 meters in diameter and was creating the sort of quantum distortion she'd only theorized about in her more speculative papers. The ones that had gotten her quietly shuffled away from major research institutions to this underfunded facility in the middle of nowhere. She reached for her phone, then stopped. The last time she'd reported an anomaly, her colleagues had spent months mockingly calling her Fox Mulder. No, this time she would gather more data first. High above the observatory, observer Zixtal was growing increasingly irritated. The planetary assessment was taking longer than expected, largely due to Earth's absurdly complex political structure. In their 1,000 years of evaluating worlds for the Galactic Federation, they had never encountered such a chaotic system. Another military installation. They noted into their record their multiple appendages dancing across holographic controls, primitive projectile weapons, and basic fusion devices. Threat assessment. Negligible. The ship's AI chirped an alert. "Observer, I'm detecting unusual scanner activity from the surface. A local scientific installation appears to be operating equipment that could potentially..." "Dismissed," Zixtal interrupted. "Their technology is at least 3 centuries behind Federation standard. They're probably detecting solar wind variations." They made another note: local scientific development, limited to basic particle physics and chemical propulsion. In the observatory below, Emma was beginning to assemble a picture that would have given Zixtal a minor cardiac event. Her outdated equipment, modified with her own unique improvements, was mapping out not just the shape of the visitor's ship, but also key elements of its propulsion system. "Gravitational field manipulation," she whispered, her eyes wide with excitement. "They're using quantum displacement too. Oh my God, that's what my third paper was about." She had to bite her knuckle to keep from laughing out loud. Her completely theoretical work on gravity wave manipulation had been closer to reality than anyone knew. Zixtal's ship continued its survey, completely unaware that their perfect cloaking technology had a critical flaw when it came to the specific frequency range Emma had been studying for the past 5 years. "Final assessment," Zixtal dictated. "Planet Earth. Class D developing world. Notable characteristics: excessive internal conflict, primitive space exploration capabilities, and concerning resource consumption patterns. Recommendation: minimal contact protocol with standard technology embargo." They added a personal note: "The species shows some promise in their entertainment media development, though their preference for fictional stories about space travel and alien contact demonstrates their cultural immaturity. Their tendency toward armed conflict makes them unsuitable for significant galactic interaction at this time." As the ship prepared to leave Earth's atmosphere, Emma was already backing up her data to 3 separate locations and beginning the first draft of a paper that would never see publication. She knew no one would believe her without proof, but she had something better: understanding. Within 3 months, she would have a working theory on replicating the alien ship's propulsion system using Earth's primitive technology. Within 6, she would have a prototype. And when the Vraxians arrived, expecting to find a helpless planet of primitives, they would learn just how wrong Zixtal's assessment had been. But for now, Emma simply watched her monitors and smiled. "Welcome to Earth," she said softly. "I think you might have missed a few things in your survey." Colonel Jake Martinez had watched every alien invasion movie ever made. It was part of his job description at the United Nations Extraterrestrial Response Division, UNERD, a program so secret that most thought its budget was a typing error in the UN's annual report. "Sir," Lieutenant Sarah Baker called out from her station, "we're getting reports of multiple objects entering the atmosphere over major cities." Her voice was steady, despite the fact that everything they had trained for was suddenly becoming reality. Martinez allowed himself a small smile. "And so it begins, just like in Independence Day, minus Will Smith." He turned to the room full of soldiers and analysts from 20 different nations. "Ladies and gentlemen, Protocol Omega is now in effect. Let's show our visitors why Earth makes for terrible real estate." The Vraxian First Contact Fleet was experiencing what their commander would later describe as tactical confusion. Their scans had shown primitive projectile weapons and basic nuclear devices. They had expected panic, chaos, and swift surrender. Instead, "High Commander," a junior officer's voice cracked with stress, "the humans are using their communications networks to coordinate global resistance. They're following established protocols." The Vraxian High Commander, Krixtar, flicked his secondary eyes in annoyance. "Impossible. The assessment clearly stated they have no unified planetary defense." He paused as his ship shuddered from what should have been an insignificant missile impact. "What are they using?" Down on the ground, Martinez watched the first phase of humanity's response unfold. The primitive nuclear submarines that the Vraxians had dismissed were launching special warheads. Not nuclear, but something far more interesting. Dr. Emma Thompson's quantum interference research had found more than one application. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. Baker counted down. Above New York, a Vraxian cruiser suddenly found itself unable to maintain its anti-gravity field as the warhead released a targeted quantum disruption pulse. The ship didn't crash. That would have been too destructive. Instead, it was gently caught in a web of high-tension cables that had been specifically designed and hidden throughout major cities for just this purpose. "Status report," Martinez barked, walking through the command center as screens showed similar scenes playing out over London, Tokyo, and Moscow. "Sir, Operation Mousetrap is 60% successful," Baker reported. "We've captured 3 ships intact and 2 more are caught in the secondary containment systems. Civilian casualties are minimal. The evacuation protocols worked better than expected." The Vraxian High Command was now facing something they had never encountered. Humans had not only prepared for their arrival, but had somehow developed countermeasures to technology they shouldn't have known existed. "How?" Krixtar demanded, watching another of his ships being systematically disabled by what looked like hastily modified Earth technology. "Their assessment. Their technology level." "Sir," his science officer interrupted, "I'm detecting quantum signature analysis equipment on the surface. They've been studying us since before the invasion." In the UNERD command center, Martinez allowed his team a brief moment of celebration as the first wave of ships was either captured or forced to retreat. "Good work, people, but this is just the beginning. They'll be back with new tactics." He looked at the captured ships being secured in specially prepared facilities. "And when they do, we'll have some new toys to play with." He turned to his communication officer. "Get me Dr. Thompson on the line. Tell her Operation Reverse Engineering is now in effect." He paused, then added with a grin, "And tell her she was right about the quantum interference patents. The UN will fast-track them all." Above Earth, the remaining Vraxian ships retreated to a safe distance, their commanders struggling to understand how their simple invasion had gone so wrong. They had made the classic mistake, assuming that a species' entertainment media was pure fiction, rather than a collection of battle plans disguised as movies, games, and books. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for over a century. They just hadn't told anyone. Major Diana Williams stared at the alien power core through her protective goggles, a screwdriver from Home Depot in one hand and a borrowed alien energy scanner in the other. Around her, A team of Earth's best engineers had turned an underground facility in Nevada into something between a workshop and a mad scientist's laboratory. "This is engineering heaven," she muttered, carefully probing the crystal matrix that seemed to power the Vraxian ships. They built everything to last for centuries, never need repairs, and never be modified. She grinned. They never met American hot rodders. Dr. Emma Thompson's voice crackled over the intercom. "Diana, my quantum readings suggest there's a secondary power flow we hadn't noticed before. It's similar to what I detected during their first arrival." "Got it," Diana replied, already reaching for a modified spectrum analyzer she'd built last week. "You know, for an advanced alien civilization, they sure don't believe in redundancy or quick repairs. Everything's perfect, permanent, and—" She paused, her eyes widening. "Completely inflexible." Across the room, her team was already taking apart other pieces of Vraxian technology. Master Surgeon Mike O'Neill, a former NASCAR mechanic, had half a gravity generator in pieces. Next to him, Dr. Patricia Rivera, who'd made her name hacking quantum computers, was interfacing Earth processors with alien control systems. "Major," O'Neill called out, "remember how you said their anti-grav tech was too perfect? Well, what if we deliberately make it imperfect?" He held up a piece of modified equipment, like how we used to squeeze extra power out of stock racing engines by making them just a little bit unstable. Diana's face lit up with understanding. "They designed for perfection," she started. "But we designed for performance," Patricia finished, her fingers flying over a hybrid human-alien keyboard. "Their systems can't handle intentional imperfection because they never considered anyone would want it." In orbit, the Vraxian battle fleet was preparing for their second attack. Their ships had been modified to counter the humans' previous tactics. High Commander Krixtar felt confident that this time, Earth's primitive technology would prove no match for their refined, perfect weapons. Back in the lab, Diana's team was about to prove them very wrong. "Test firing in 3, 2, 1. Diana called out. The hybrid weapon they'd created, part alien power core, part human particle accelerator, and part modified video game console processor, hummed to life. Instead of the steady, perfect beam they'd seen from Vraxian weapons, this one pulsed irregularly, each burst following a pattern that looked like pure chaos, but actually matched old jazz rhythms. "It works," Patricia shouted, as their sensors showed the beam cutting through Vraxian shield frequencies, like they weren't even there. "Their perfect shields can't adapt to irregular patterns." Diana was already on the secure line to Colonel Martinez. "Sir, Operation Reverse is ahead of schedule. We've got something better than copies of their tech. We've got something they've never seen before." The next day, when the Vraxian fleet began their second attack, they found themselves facing weapons that shouldn't have existed. Their perfect shields failed against attacks that followed the beat of Miles Davis. Their gravity systems crashed when hit with fields that fluctuated like rock and roll solos. In his command ship, Krixtar watched in horror as his fleet's technology, the pride of 50 generations of perfect engineering, was being defeated by what his engineers described as deliberately imperfect human modifications. "How?" he demanded. "How are they doing this?" Down in her lab, Diana was already working on the next innovation, her team taking apart alien tech with the same spirit that had once led humans to turn Model T Fords into hot rods. The galaxy's greatest mistake, she said to herself, was thinking perfect engineering was better than creative engineering. She looked at the new device they were building, part alien teleporter, part microwave oven, and part gaming console. Let's show them why Earth's garage inventors are more dangerous than their engineering academies. Jack Anderson had spent 20 years reading tells at high-stakes poker tables before the State Department recruited him. Now, sitting across from Ambassador Cliff of the Galactic Federation, He was using those same skills to see through what had to be the biggest bluff in human history. "So let me get this straight," Jack said, maintaining the casual demeanor that had won him millions. "You're offering to protect Earth from the fractions in exchange for, what was it again?" He shuffled the documents on the table, a deliberate tell he perfected years ago. Cliff's upper appendages twitched slightly, the alien equivalent of a nervous swallow. "Merely administrative oversight of your military development and resource management. For your own protection, of course." Behind Jack, a team of Earth's top diplomats watched the exchange through one-way glass. Among them was Dr. Sarah Chen, an expert in game theory, who had helped design Earth's diplomatic strategy. She smiled as she watched Jack work. "The ambassador doesn't know that we've already been talking to the Centaurians," she whispered to her colleague, "or the Regellians, or the Arcturus Trade Consortium." Jack leaned back in his chair, every movement calculated. "That's a generous offer," he said, using the same tone that had once made a Saudi prince fold a royal flush. "But I think we both know that's not your real position." Cliff's chromatophores flickered. Another tell Jack had cataloged. The Federation ambassador was realizing too late that they weren't dealing with simple primitives. "I don't understand," Cliff said, their translator struggling to maintain the diplomatic tones. "Our intelligence suggests your species has no experience with interstellar politics." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "You know what's interesting about Earth? We got over 200 nations, each with their own agenda. We've been practicing complex diplomatic relations since before we invented the wheel." He pulled out a different set of documents. "And speaking of interesting things, here's a trade agreement we just finalized with the Centaurians." The color drained from Cliff's face scales. That's impossible. The Centaurians never deal with developing worlds." "Turns out they love our coffee," Jack said. "And our jazz music. Did you know they've been secretly downloading our entertainment networks for years?" He laid out more documents. "Oh, and here's our technology exchange program with the Regellians, and our cultural exchange treaty with the Arcturus Trade Consortium." In the observation room, Dr. Chen watched the Federation ambassador's composure crumble. While the galactic powers had been trying to decide how to handle Earth, humanity had been running the greatest diplomatic end run in history. "How?" Cliff finally asked. "Your species was classified as diplomatically immature." Jack shrugged, a gesture he'd practiced for hours to appear casual yet confident. "We've had thousands of years of practice at finding common ground between different cultures. Did you know that right now, on Earth, we're successfully managing trade relations between countries that don't even officially recognize each other's existence?" He spread his hands in a disarming gesture. "So, why don't we start over? But this time, let's discuss a real partnership, one that recognizes Earth as what it actually is. A world that's been running a masterclass in complex diplomacy since before your Federation existed." Cliff's translator was silent for a long moment. "Then, the Federation would be interested in revising its initial proposal." "Wonderful," Jack said, his smile never wavering. "And while we're at it, let's talk about that technology embargo. Because I've got some very interesting reports from Major Williams about some improvements we've made to your perfect engineering." As the real negotiations began, Dr. Chen updated her status report to the UN Security Council. "Operation Diplomatic Shuffle is proceeding as planned. The galaxy is about to learn why Earth's history of complex international relations was actually our greatest diplomatic asset." In the conference room, Jack Anderson prepared to play his next hand in humanity's greatest poker game. The stakes, only the future of Earth and the galactic community. But then again, he'd always did play better when the pot was worth playing for. Lieutenant Ashley Cooper was having a very bad day. Her combat unit was pinned down in the ruins of downtown Seattle. Their hybrid weapons were running low on power, and she just discovered that her personal AI assistant had accidentally synced her entire music library to the squad's combat communication system. Cooper. Her surgeon's voice crackled over the comm. What the hell is Thunderstruck, and why is it playing on all channels? Before she could answer, something unexpected happened. The advancing Vraxian troops stopped. Their head tentacles began moving in sync with AC/DC's legendary guitar riff. "Oh, man," Private Rodriguez called out. "I think the aliens are headbanging." Ashley watched in amazement as the enemy soldiers started moving to the beat, their weapons lowering as they became entranced by the driving rhythm and electric guitar. She quickly pulled up her music library. "New plan," she announced. "We're going to find out just how universal music really is." In orbit, Vraxian Commander Zixnar was facing a crisis. His ground forces were reporting mass cultural contamination as human music spread through their ranks like a virus. But it wasn't just the music. Human movies, television shows, and games were being shared among his troops at an alarming rate. "Sir," his cultural containment officer reported, "we've lost 3 more squadrons to something called rock and roll. They're requesting permission to start a band." Zixnar slammed all 4 hands onto his command console. How is this possible? Their entertainment was classified as primitive and unsophisticated. Back on Earth, Ashley's discovery had reached the attention of the United Nations Cultural Division. Within hours, Operation Woodstock was launched. Major cities around the world began broadcasting Earth's greatest hits into space, while Special Forces units were equipped with what they called sonic warfare packages, really just really good sound systems. "You're telling me," General Martinez said during the emergency briefing, "that we're going to fight the aliens with the Beatles?" "Not just the Beatles, sir," Ashley replied, now promoted to cultural warfare specialist. "We're hitting them with everything. Jazz, classical, hip-hop, K-pop, Bollywood hits." Turns out their species has never developed music beyond simple mathematical harmonies. They have no defense against Earth's musical diversity. The effect on galactic society was beyond anyone's expectations. Underground markets for human music sprang up across dozens of worlds. Alien teenagers began adopting Earth fashion and slang, much to their parents' horror. Vraxian military discipline crumbled as entire units went AWOL to start cover bands. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Clith reported to the Federation Council. "Their cultural output is infectious. We've got Centaurian diplomats attempting something called break-dancing and Rigelian scholars analyzing something called memes." Ashley found herself promoted again, this time to Director of Galactic Cultural Exchange. Her office in New York was flooded with requests from alien species wanting to license Earth entertainment. "They don't just want our technology," she explained to the UN Council. "They want our stories, our music, our art. We're not just winning the war, we're winning their hearts and minds." A young Vraxian defector, now working as her assistant, nodded enthusiastically. His head tentacles were dyed in rainbow colors, and his uniform had been modified to look like something from a K-pop video. "Your culture is pure chaos," he said admiringly. "It's beautiful. Do you know there's now a Vraxian underground movement called the Rebels that only communicates through Earth song lyrics?" Ashley smiled as she looked at the latest reports. Across the galaxy, rigid societies were being transformed by the unstoppable force of human creativity. The Federation had dismissed Earth's entertainment as primitive, never realizing that its very chaos, its wild diversity, would become their greatest weapon. "Send a message to High Command," she told her assistant. "Tell them Operation Cultural Revolution is proceeding better than expected. And add a PS. The galaxy's greatest mistake was thinking that art had to be perfect to be powerful." Dr. Marcus Reynolds stood before the Galactic Science Council, his presentation ready and his old lucky lab coat still stained with coffee from his university days. The amphitheater was filled with the most brilliant scientific minds in the galaxy, all here to mock what they called his primitive theoretical framework. Distinguished colleagues, he began, unable to keep a slight smirk off his face. You've all read my paper on quantum classical hybrid drive systems. You've all said it's impossible. Now, let me show you why Earth's primitive understanding of physics is about to turn your world upside down. In the front row, Dr. Emma Thompson gave him an encouraging nod. Her discovery of the alien ships had led to this moment, and her team's research had helped prove his wild theories. Your species still uses classical physics. One of the alien scientists called out, "How could you possibly understand true quantum engineering?" Marcus smiled, remembering all the times his ideas had been dismissed on Earth. That's exactly the point. We never abandoned classical physics when we discovered quantum mechanics. Instead, we kept both. And that's why we can see something you've missed. He activated the holographic display, showing a new type of space drive that combined both classical and quantum principles. The alien scientists leaned forward despite themselves, their multiple eyes widening as they followed his calculations. You see, Marcus continued, by only using quantum physics, you've limited yourselves. You've forgotten that reality exists on multiple scales. But humans, we've always been comfortable with contradictions. We accept that light can be both a wave and a particle. That Schrödinger's cat can be both alive and dead. In the audience, a senior Rigelian physicist started running the numbers on their own device. Their color-shifting skin turned pale as they realized the implications. This can't be right, they stammered. According to these calculations, your drive system would be 300% more efficient than our current technology. Actually, Emma called out from her seat, it's 327% more efficient. We already built a prototype. Want to see it work? The amphitheater erupted in chaos as Marcus activated a small device on his podium. A moment later, a cup of fresh coffee appeared next to him, teleported from a coffee shop in Seattle using less energy than a traditional light bulb. We call it the barista drive, he said, taking the sip, because sometimes you just need coffee from your favorite shop on the other side of the planet, or galaxy. The next few hours were a blur of questions, demands for proof, and increasingly excited theoretical discussions. By the end of the day, 3 major galactic universities had offered Marcus research positions, and the Galactic Science Council had established a new division specifically to study human theoretical frameworks. I don't understand, one of the council members said to Emma as they left the chamber. Your species barely had fusion power when we found you. How did you make such a leap? Emma thought about the long nights in her observatory, about Marcus's crazy theories that combined old and new physics, about how humanity had never been afraid to question everything they thought they knew. We made this leap, she said, because we never stopped looking at old problems in new ways, and because every time someone told us something was impossible, we took it as a challenge. Back on Earth, Major Williams's team was already incorporating Marcus's new drive into their hybrid weapon systems. Jack Anderson was negotiating technology-sharing treaties that would reshape the galaxy's power structure. And in clubs across a dozen worlds, alien bands were playing rock covers while using the new Earth-inspired technology to create light shows that defied physics as the galaxy had known it. Marcus finished his Seattle coffee and looked out at the stars through the council chamber's window. The galaxy's greatest mistake, he mused, was thinking that scientific progress only moves in one direction. They never realize that sometimes you have to look back to move forward. Rachel Sullivan had started her career running a food truck in downtown Chicago. Now she was standing before the Galactic Economic Council, explaining why her company, Fusion Flavors Incorporated, had just disrupted 10,000 years of carefully managed galactic commerce. Look, she said, gesturing to the holographic charts. Your economy is based on stability, right? Long-term planning, controlled growth, No surprises. She pulled up an image of her original food truck. But Earth? We learned to thrive on chaos. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their anti-gravity seats. One of them, a Centaurian trade minister, spoke up. Your methods are unprecedented. You launched 500 business ventures across 3 sectors in just 6 months, and only 50 of them succeeded, Rachel added cheerfully. We call that a good return on investment. The failed ones, we learned from them, adapted, and tried again. In the observation gallery, Jack Anderson watched with pride. After his diplomatic breakthroughs, he'd been one of the first to back Rachel's Galactic business expansion. He still remembered her pitch. If they think our music is addictive, wait until they try our food trucks. Rachel continued her presentation. While your corporation spent decades planning perfect market entries, we launched quick, adapted fast, and let our customers tell us what they wanted. She brought up new images, food trucks on Rigel, pop-up shops on Centauri, and Earth-style street markets on dozens of worlds. Your economic model said it would fail. A Federation economist protested. The risk factors were too high. That's because your models don't account for human creativity, Rachel replied. She pulled up another chart. See this? It's our fail fast, learn faster strategy. When our first alien food truck burned Rigelian spices, we didn't spend years studying the problem. We created 5 new recipes that same day. The council chamber erupted in murmurs as she displayed the growth charts. Earth-style businesses were spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, each one adapting and evolving in real time. But the supply chains. Another council member protested. The quality control. The 5-year planning cycles. Rachel laughed. We replaced all that with something better. Customer feedback and social media. She showed them the Galactic Yelp platform her team had created. When a Vraxian food critic posts a bad review, we don't call a board meeting. We fix the problem before their second cup of coffee. In his private chamber, the head of the Galactic Economic Council was having an emergency meeting with his advisors. How did we not see this coming? He demanded. We classified their economic system as primitive and unstable, an advisor replied. We never considered that instability could be an advantage. Back in the main chamber, Rachel was showing off her latest innovation, a mobile app that let customers from any species order customized fusion dishes from any Earth-style restaurant in the galaxy. While your companies were perfect and unchanging, we were learning, adapting, and growing, she explained. Every failed business taught us something new. Every success showed us 10 more opportunities. She pulled up one final chart, Earth's total galactic market influence. The line shot up like a rocket, breaking through every economic model the galaxy had ever created. The future of galactic business isn't in perfect, unchanging systems, she concluded. It's in quick adaptation, creative solutions, and most importantly, she paused, grinning, in letting people try new things without fear of failure. As the council session ended, Rachel checked her galactic phone. Her company's latest venture, introducing Earth-style food courts to alien shopping centers, had just gone live on 50 worlds simultaneously. The galaxy's greatest mistake, she typed in her report to Earth's Economic Advisory Board, was thinking that perfect stability was better than dynamic growth. They never realize that sometimes the best business plan is having the courage to try something new. She added a postscript. Also, turns out Vraxians really love Chicago-style deep dish pizza. Who knew? High Observer Zixtel stood before the new class of Galactic Assessment Officers, their original report about Earth displayed behind them as a cautionary tale. The audience was a mix of species, including, for the first time, several humans. Today, they began, we study the greatest miscalculation in galactic history, one that changed not just how we assess civilizations, but how we understand progress itself. In the front row, Dr. Emma Thompson smiled. She'd come full circle from the observer, who first spotted their ship, to being part of the team rewriting the galaxy's understanding of civilization. "We made 3 critical errors," Zixtal continued. "First, we assumed technology progressed in a single linear direction. Second, we believed stability was always superior to adaptability. And third," they paused, their chromatophores showing embarrassment, "we thought our standards were the only standards." The holographic display shifted, showing scenes from the past year. Major Williams's hybrid technology revolutionizing engineering. Colonel Martinez's military strategies being taught at Galactic academies. Lieutenant Cooper's cultural exchange programs transforming societies. Dr. Reynolds's scientific theories reshaping physics. And Rachel Sullivan's business empire spanning the stars. Earth taught us that true advancement isn't about reaching a single perfect state, Zixtal explained. It's about maintaining the ability to question, adapt, and yes, even fail. In orbit above them, the new Earth Braxian Cultural Center was hosting its first galactic battle of the bands. Alien musicians played Earth rock classics, while human artists experimented with instruments from across the galaxy. The music could be heard through the chamber's windows, a mix of classic rock and alien harmonies that would have been impossible a year ago. "We've created a new classification system," Zixtal announced. "One that measures not just where a civilization is, but how it thinks, how it adapts, how it dreams." They gestured to Jack Anderson, who had just finished negotiating Earth's full membership in the Galactic Federation, with some special provisions that had never been seen before. "Earth will be our first case study," Jack said, standing to address the class. "But more importantly, we're changing how we approach every world we find. Because the next Earth might not look like Earth at all. But they might have that same spark, that same ability to surprise us." The display showed new images, joint human-alien research teams, cultural exchange programs, and the first graduating class of the Galactic Innovation Institute, where being primitive was now seen as having fresh perspective. Dr. Emma Thompson stepped forward, her original quantum readings of Zixtal's ship still part of the historical record. "Today, I'm leading humanity's first official assessment team. We're heading to a world that, by our old standards, would have been dismissed as primitive." She smiled at Zixtal. "But we know better now. We're going to look not just at their technology, but at their art, their dreams, their ability to question and adapt." The chamber's doors opened, and Rachel Sullivan's latest innovation was wheeled in. A food cart serving a fusion of cuisines from 20 different worlds. "And most importantly," she added, "we're going to learn from them, just as they might learn from us." As the session ended, Zixtal updated their final report on Earth. The new classification simply read, "Category: Undefined. Approach with caution and wonder." They added a personal note. "The galaxy's greatest mistake was thinking we had nothing left to learn. Earth taught us that true civilization isn't about reaching perfection. It's about never stopping the journey toward it." Outside, a group of young alien officers were heading to their first assignments, their training materials now, including everything from Sun Tzu to Shakespeare, from Earth patent law to rock and roll. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, another young civilization was looking up at the stars, dreaming their own unique dreams, waiting for the day when a ship would arrive, not to judge them, but to learn from them.